My sister-in-law and I have an agreement. She watches my kids 3 days a week, and I watch hers 3 days a week. This agreement has stood since March 2020 without issues. Any changes have been discussed weeks in advance. A couple weeks ago, we had an argument. The next day, I brought my kids to her house, dropped them off, and left. I didn't speak to my sister-in-law, because when one of us is in a rush, like I was, it's standard for us to just let the kids out, stay in the car, and drive off when you see the door open. I drove to work, about 40 minutes away. When I got there, I had about 20 missed calls, and even more texts, all from my sister-in-law, all saying she didn't want to watch the kids given our argument. Her first text arrived a little before I got to her place, but I didn't see it until I got to work because my phone is always on silent when I drive. I rang her, said I'll arrange to work from home, then come get the kids. She said I have 45 minutes to get back to her place or she would call the police. I told my supervisor the situation, and she said I could leave after I did a few things. This delayed me 20 minutes. When I got back to my sister-in-law's, just over an hour later, she said she'd already called the police when the 45 minutes ran out. I then had to stick around long enough to tell the officer that I didn't abandon my children, there was just a communication issue. Sister-in-law and I had another shouting match later over this. I arranged other childcare for my kids and I've been mostly ignoring her since. However, she reached out and apologized, and has asked if I'd be willing to go back to the old childcare arrangement. I work with kids. If I got child abandonment on my record, I would never work in my field again, which she knew. And her calling the police was a massive overreaction, so if she needs a babysitter she can go whistle for all I care. She said that if I checked my phone, talked to her that morning, or came back when I was supposed to, she would not have needed to call the police, and I did this to myself. As she gave me a warning with that first text and I could have checked my phone or spoken to her directly when I got to her place. All of which she says she would have done if she were in my position, given that we'd argued the night before. I've told her that if she thinks I'm babysitting for her, she's delusional, and she's on her own. Because of my refusal, it's looking like she may have to quit her job because my brother and her would pay more for a babysitter than they would earn from her working. My mother and brother have both called me an arsehole because there were no consequences to her calling the police, and that while she overreacted, she's apologized, so if I really forgive her, I'll let us move on. This income loss would also mean that she, my brother, and my niece and nephew might need to move somewhere cheaper. That my brother might have to take on extra hours at work. And in an extreme scenario they may even be completely unable to live independently, meaning they'd have to move in with her parents, who live several hours away. I am one of 4 kids. My older brother P, who I no longer have any contact with, my younger brother J, who is no longer with us, and my youngest sister K. Recently P's children, 2 girls and 1 boy, all in their late teens and early 20s, reached out to me and expressed a desire to have a relationship. I have 0 contact with their father and swore that I would beat him black and blue if I ever saw him again. My oldest brother P was always the golden child. No matter what he did, my parents always had an excuse for why it was not his fault. Bad grade? Teacher had it out for him. Cheating on every single one of his relationships? Good thing you did it to her before she did it to you. That one was my personal favorite. He also used to torment Jay and I constantly when we were smaller than him, until in high school, when I hit a growth spurt and sprung up to about 6 feet 4 inches and 230 pounds worth of muscle. After that I became the typical jock type. Played football, partied, bunch of friends, etc. Well, my younger brother, Jay, didn't get as lucky and stayed pretty small and scrawny throughout high school and college, only getting up to about 5 feet 8 inches, and didn't have a super active social life. Despite the difference in our schooling experience, I was always very protective of Jay, especially since we were always having to put up with P's bullshit, which stopped once he realized I could pound him into the ground and not break a sweat, as he was also a lot smaller than me at only 5 feet 10 inches. Not much to say about Kay. She was a great younger sister and P didn't dare mess with her or he would incur the wrath of our mother. So, in the late 90s, Jay met his first real girlfriend, A, and was over the moon about her. He spent every spare moment with her, and when he wasn't with her, he would do nothing but gush about her. I had never seen him so happy. Well, one day, he comes to us, all smiles, and announces that A is pregnant and they are expecting. The mood quickly turned, however, when a week later it came out that A had been cheating on J for the duration of their relationship, with our older brother P. This broke my brother, and of course P, being the golden shit that he is, didn't even get a disappointed glance from our parents. To this day I have never seen someone look so broken as J had looked the last time I saw him. I believe his heartache was only compounded by the fact that my parents basically told him to get over it and be happy for our brother. Well, about a week after this revelation came to light, J took his own life. I had never been so sad and angry at the same time in my entire life. Sad that I would never see my brother again, and the pure rage of knowing that this was my brother and parents' fault. During the funeral, P walked in with A and I saw red. Thankfully I had other family there to stop me from doing anything stupid, but I told P that if I ever saw him again, I would kill him. Shortly after that, I cut contact with 90% of my family, with the exception of K and a cousin I had always been close with, because everyone except them wanted to make excuses for my parents and P. Even though my sister was just as crushed about Jay's death as I was and was angry for a long time. She and her then boyfriend, future husband, hit a financial rough patch after graduating college and were forced to move in with our parents. Due to unrelated drama at the time, they couldn't stay with me. So my sister stayed with them for several years, and over that time their relationship improved, and even though I wasn't thrilled at the time, I understood. She still doesn't really have a relationship with P, but is cordial if they meet. I don't blame her, because our parents did a lot for her and daughters love their cousins. So I didn't want to put her in that kind of position of choosing. I never had any kids, and truth be told, I never wanted any. I much preferred the role of the fun uncle. K met a great guy and had 2 daughters, who I absolutely adore. P had 2 more kids with A before cheating on her and splitting, and I've never met any of them. My parents have tried to make contact a handful of times, but I always told them to kick rocks. So last week, I'm chatting with K's daughters, 19 and 17. And they mentioned that their cousins have wanted to meet me for a long time and were hoping I would be willing to meet them as well. I don't believe they know everything that transpired between their dad and I, but I would be lying if I said I never had any desire to meet them. My son Simon, he is 16, moved out of the room he used to share with his little brother and got his own room a few months back. Ever since, he's been complaining about his mom barging in without knocking and interrupting his sleep and studying. Sometimes when he's changing. I know that she's his mother, but he says he's got his own room and has a job and is learning to become an independent adult, but doesn't feel like his privacy is being respected even when that's his mom. He says he's not a kid anymore and is entitled to at least get a knock on the door before she comes in. He was getting tired of her not listening to him, so he came to me and said, "Dad, you need to help me set some clear boundaries with Mom." So I spoke to her about her need to knock before entering Simon's room. She was like, "What? And no, we're family, not strangers. Do you really expect me to foolishly knock on the door 5 times a day? That's ridiculous. Also, the knocks doors in their own home?" I told her my family, for instance. She made a face, then went on a rant about how my family hate each other's and the way they treat each other's like they were strangers is shameful. I told her family or strangers, it's about respecting one's privacy. We had an argument about it, and I told her if she wasn't going to stop with the barging and refuse to knock on the door before entering, then our son will get a lock. She did it again at 11 p.m. She barged in when our son was asleep. He jumped up because he got scared. Once he told me this, I told him to go ahead and get a lock and pay for it with his own money. There was literally no other way. My wife saw it and got upset, and my brother was visiting when she was raising her voice at me if I really went ahead and got a lock for Simon despite her disapproval, and said that I caught her off guard and it's not okay. Because this teaches our children that they can manipulate one parent into doing what they want. I told her that Simon got the lock, not me, and I already warned her about the possibility of him getting a lock, because he was getting tired of her boundary crossing. So she should have expected this outcome. She mentioned the same above points in her defense and said locks mean secrets, and that's not good. My brother was sitting watching while she was complaining. She began chewing him out when he asked her to let Simon keep the lock and said it wasn't a big deal. She stopped talking to me and Simon till we remove the lock, but I've no intentions on doing that. I've got cerebral palsy that affects both my legs and one arm. That's my official diagnosis, but what you really see is I walk with a limp. I'm a software developer, so job-wise, I don't have any issues. I knew when I was a kid that using my brain is the best way for me to survive on my own without relying on other people. I haven't had the chance to get my driver's license, but according to therapists and doctors that shouldn't be an issue. That's the background about me. My girlfriend and I have been together for a year. We met back in April 2020 of last year and we decided to get together in May 2020. I told her about my disability before then, but she wanted to try and make it work. We video call on Discord every day, almost always when we're awake, and recently we've been going on dates. She's more than happy to lend me an arm and she notices things about me that even I miss myself. Outside of my family, she's the most loving and caring person I know, and she's my motivation to do better and improve myself. Honestly, I never thought I could find someone I trusted enough to share my more negative thoughts and problems. I always tried to seem happy so I don't worry others. The emotional support she gives me is really irreplaceable. The problem is scared that, in the future, she will have to take care of me or most of the work will fall onto her. To make matters worse, her mom has been telling her for the past few weeks to break up with me because she can find better, and she doesn't want her to have the burden of caring for me. She's also really afraid that I will get arthritis early due to my cerebral palsy, and if that happens, a lot is going to be on her. I've tried doing things like stretches and exercises to maintain and improve my muscle tone, but she is still afraid I'll get worse. I'm an introvert, I don't know a lot of people, and honestly, I don't even know the options I've got to look at. I want to prove that I can be independent and that if things do go wrong, it won't just be on her. I'm in Ontario, Canada. Are there things I can look into and do to assist with my disability, or things I can look into so if things do go wrong, I won't be a burden on her? I'm at the end of my wits. I've never really hated my disability, but I've always kept myself going by tempering my expectations and thinking, my disability is going to make it really hard to find someone, and she's the first person to make me feel like, yeah, it doesn't matter. I want to do anything to show her that I won't hold her back in the future, but I'm out of ideas. Is there anything I can do? I don't want to worry anyone I'm with these issues, but I'm at the end of my wits. I don't even know if my relationship is lost, but I don't want this to happen again, and I want to know what I can do myself so I can reassure my partner, so they know I won't hold them back in the future. I don't know if there are things I can look into to better plan my future so it's not a concern for my partner. The worst part is, I've always thought my disability doesn't matter. But with all of this happening, it's really hard to convince myself otherwise.